Next question from Grandy K. Hello. Follow over from moderation office hours. What do you think about custom clients for Resonite, either including FrooxEngine itself or reverse engineer FrooxEngine in another language? So this one's kind of tricky because I remember you were asking during moderation hours, about is it okay to do this from moderation perspective and from legal perspective, and there might be some complications there, but what I would like to focus on is more just the technical and philosophical perspective of custom third-party clients. It's the first thing is defining what is a custom client, because you mentioned including FrooxEngine itself. If you use FrooxEngine itself, is that a custom client, because it's technically just using the same FrooxEngine as the rest. So I think in that case, it's not really something you'd call a third-party client. It's more just a modded client. You kind of modify bits of it. Reverse engineering is that's another thing. That one can be tricky from legal perspective, but if you don't consider that part, I think that's significant undertaking, because you would pretty much have to re-implement FrooxEngine and have it behave the same way the current one does, which that is a huge undertaking. It will take a long time to implement something like that, at least if you want to achieve feature parity and have full compatibility. Let me actually move over there because I do wanna showcase give you a little bit of visualization for this. So, typical thing, when people talk about third-party clients, they generally think about Second Life, because Second Life is one of the platforms that is known for having third-party clients, and there's an important thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is how FrooxEngine works, how Resonite works compared to Second Life. With Second Life, you have your servers, you have the grid that are running a lot of complex logic. There's a lot of stuff here. There's complex things and so on. And this is the Second Life server. So, and this is running a lot of the complex logic, stuff that is actually happening on the server. And then you have your relatively thin client, or viewer, which has few bits to get the data of the scene that's happening and display that to you, which makes it much easier to replace this with a modified version, because there's this kind of separation between the server and between the viewer. With Resonite, however, it uses a different architecture, and it's kind of architecture where everything's within one. So you can have this be server, but it's also a client. Pretty much majority of the code runs on both and is the same. So we have a lot of kind of complexity here. We have all the engine stuff. We have audio systems, if protoflags, the scene system rendering. A lot of the complexity is in here of what is actually happening. All the UI, all pretty much everything that's happening in Resonite is all within the single thing, which means you cannot really swap out the viewer as easily. And if you wanted to re-implement it, you would need to re-implement pretty much all of this. Versus with Second Life, you might just need to re-implement a bunch of these bits, and it's still compatible, with the server infrastructure that just stays as it is. So I think for Resonite, it doesn't make as much sense, having these kinds of third-party clients. What you would have to do for it to be compatible, because in order for these clients to connect to each other, they rely on all of these bits behaving the same. So if you wanted to reverse engineer all of this and implement another language and be compatible with each other, you'd have to take the huge undertaking of re-implementing years and years and years worth of code, which I don't think is I don't think that's easily achievable. because it will take a long time, and and in between then we're also going to implement like a lot of other things. So to me, what makes more sense is just taking these clients and maybe like you have a modified version which adds extra bits here, or maybe like modifies few bits here. It's kind of the way like mods are doing, and use that. So instead of like that being like a third-party client, it's more like using a modified one, and I think that works like much better with like Resonite's, or specifically like FrooxEngine's architecture, compared to something like this. I think it pretty much kind of covers this thing. It's it's just to kind of reiterate the point. It's essentially like you don't have like sort of a separate client. It's kind of like a thinner version, because like everything is kind of happening, and Resonite is based on everybody in the session potentially being able to execute any of the code. And you can have like one of the client, you can have like the responsibilities delegated, you can have only particular client running certain updates and certain modifications, but everybody has the potential capability to do so. That's more of like a software thing. So I don't think like reverse engineering like FrooxEngine like is too feasible. It's gonna take like it'll take a really long time, and doing it in a way that preserves the compatibility, because you have to make sure like things kind of behave the same, is very difficult. If you were, because you probably want to stay compatible with the other clients, otherwise just kind of developing a different platform that's similar, but you cannot connect to others. You could potentially like like, even just to give you an example, you could potentially just implement a subset, but then a bunch of things will not be working. Say for example you implemented only mesh renders and static meshes. Now anything using procedural meshes is not going to render. So like anybody using avatar like that, it's just not going to work. Any of the tools are not going to work. If you don't implement protoflags, then like anything that's like driven, any materials, any behaviors, any avatars that use that doesn't work. Like you kind of have to implement like most of it like to really be compatible with other clients. So I think for Resonite in particular, I don't think we'll probably see like custom viewers. We'll more see like modded versions of them. You did mention like in the moderation chat is like having a like modifying the renderer, which is actually one of the things we're doing, is like that this, we're gonna move the renderer into its separate process, and then like this communicates with that. So like whatever the render bits are are gonna be here, and it's gonna be a separate process. So you could potentially you could replace this bit and have your own renderer, which is also like a relatively big undertaking, and also like it only lets you do, limited things, because you cannot change how any of this behaves. And if you want to do it, say for performance reasons, that's not really going to help you unless you're GPU limited, because the majority of CPU time is being spent here. So if you replace this, that's not going to help, with any of these bits. And also fundamentally, I would say that still doesn't make it, custom third-party client. That just makes it a custom renderer. That's not like, too different from just modifying some bits in here. Like if you considered this to be one thing. But I feel like we're kind of getting a little bit philosophical with that one. But yeah, like you could replace some bits like the renderer. It's something we already plan to do. We don't want to like switch to a custom renderer, but also one thing you have to realize, the renderer is only responsible for the rendering. So replacing that, you can make maybe improvements in that regard, change how it works, but isn't going to help with any of these bits. So I do hope that kind of like, makes things a little bit clearer and, answers your question. If you got like any follow-ups, let me know, and like, we'll get to those after we get through a bunch of the other questions.